Hello, I'm David Zahn from OK Now What, and I'm glad you chose to join me, whether you're joining me live as I'm recording this, or if you're seeing the recording after it has been posted in our Facebook group. In either case, please let me know below in the comments whether you're live or, well, I know you're alive, but whether you're viewing this live or if you are viewing this as part of a recording. Today's session is going to address the way that we have to balance short-term requirements with long-term goals. And let's face it, life is always a bit of a precarious balancing act. And as we talk often in the Facebook group about career choices and how to best circumvent some of the things that hold us up and pursue those things that are helpful to us in eventually reaching the career goal that we have established, I think that it's worth us perhaps peeling back some of those layers of the onion to discuss. When I do have conversations with people who identify as educator administrators, I often hear from them that they are just inundated with reports that they have to file with either the central or district office. Very often, they express a certain amount of frustration with the amount of time, energy, effort that these reports require, and they ask themselves, why? For what? What is the ultimate outcome of all of the back and forth informational exchange? Sometimes that information is even lackluster at best in terms of accuracy, but we have to meet the deadline, so we send in the report. And so when I ask the administrators, sometimes tongue in cheek, the response I get that they just fill it out to take up room in a filing cabinet somewhere. Or they'll say to me that, well, I really find it's mostly used to track and punish my school for not achieving an objective that frankly was never realistic. And by and large, many of them say there's really no purpose at all. It's just how we do things here. When I speak to the teachers and ask them about some of those short-term requirements that get in the way that they find especially frustrating, they will often also mention the what they'll refer to as the blizzard of paperwork, very often with very obscene time frames that these assignments they're given require to respond in really very short durations, very short time frames, and it often pushes their, as they call it, their real job to the side in order to make the deadline that has been established for them. Clearly a very frustrating situation. And they especially share with me that they resent that they have to often do it on their own time, taking away crucial time with family, friends, neighbors, community, religious institutions, etc., because they have to meet a deadline that they frankly don't often understand why it exists. For both the administrator and the teacher, they will often have a sense of bewilderment that they don't understand why this has to be done, why it has to be done now. There's limited, if any, time for preparation. These often get dropped into people's laps very last minute with an urgency that they must be returned or completed by a wholly unreasonable amount of time. Doesn't allow a whole lot of time for thinking, analysis. It's more just churn, burn, and if they ever are asked, or if they ever do ask, why do we do it this way? The answer is, well, that's how we've always done it. And as I'm sure all of you who either have your own children or are working with small children, if you ever have to answer that question, but why? I'm sure you have wanted to ask that question of your superiors and supervisors. And it is very frustrating to hear because, or I said so. So certainly that frustration is shared fairly universally, regardless of one's role within the school system. And I think that if you're like me, you probably have thought you just wish you could stop the world, get off temporarily, just temporarily, and spend some time being able to truly focus, being able to analyze something and being given the ability to think through the implications of something and provide a more comprehensive approach to something. We all seek the time and the space that is required so that we can do our job to its absolute best expectation. We just want to be able to strategize. We just want to be able to truly give our best effort and not just meet a deadline for a deadline's sake. But instead, what often happens is that we are forced to be in this forever fight or flight mode to meet the crisis of the day. And that crisis always seems to appear each and every day. So there's this overemphasis on short term performance, which is choking our ability to properly develop a strategy. Now, I'm not just talking in some philosophical or academic way. Because you are a member of this Facebook group, what I'm really driving at is how we're going to make career decisions. We're all caught up in that uh, constant challenge to meet today's new requirement. And we don't often have enough time to really ponder, to think, to assess what else can I be doing? How can I use my skills? Is what I'm currently doing sufficiently satisfying that maybe I shouldn't look elsewhere? It's really these short term requirements. You have a job to do with certain expectations placed upon you versus your personal long term goals. How do we craft and carve out the amount of time, energy, space for us to think about our future goals? But turning back to what we have to do today, you probably have to get that report card out on time and complete the IEP form. And oh, by the way, you have to cover the absent teacher's classes because he or she was unable to make it into school today. Never mind that this is going to cut into your prep period. We can't have a class full of kids with no authority adult teacher in front of them. We are forever on a treadmill. And just like any treadmill, you're not going very far. You could be going very fast, but you're not really making a whole tremendous amount of progress if we're talking about distance traveled. You're just in a furious keeping up with the place you're at so you don't fall behind, but you're not really going forward. So if we were to approach those in charge and say, we could really do a much better job if we could just spend the time to really consider where we need to go, where we currently are, what resources exist to help us get there, where are the gaps that we need to fill, all those kinds of questions that are very native to us as educators and teachers. But what we'll get back is that we won't be able to sacrifice now for the betterment that is awaiting us later because short term discomfort is to be avoided, even if it means we have to live with the long term discomfort because we don't acknowledge that change can be difficult, but once it's completed, the reward, the return is so much better than what we currently have to endure. But because we know what we know, even if it is the equivalent of the pebble in your shoe, we live with it. And we perhaps develop blisters, to use the analogy, and eventually we'll bleed a bit, but in time we'll get a callus. But the pebble remains. Wouldn't it be so much better if we took the time to maybe take off our sandal or our shoe, remove the pebble so that we can continue on our way without having to endure that kind of pain? So we so often don't allow ourselves to have time for the long term planning because we are forever chasing the next crisis, the next must do, have to get it done, deadline looming. And so, what we wind up doing, frankly, is we just treat symptoms and not causes. And we are in a forever cycle of treating the symptom and never eliminating that which is truly at the root of the issue that should be addressed, but we just don't give ourselves enough time to do that. And I admit there's this tension. It's a struggle. How do you chart a course for the future while simultaneously navigating the currents, if not the tidal wave, of the here and now? That is our challenge. And if you are serious about using your expertise, your experience, your background, your interests and passions to use them in a way that perhaps could be far more fulfilling for you, then I would venture to say it's worth the short term discomfort to pursue that, learn about it, take coaching, investigate what it would require so that you can make an informed decision and move forward rather than simply wishing to yourself, oh, if only I could, if only I would. Not going to be helpful. And as hard as it is to navigate and manage this balance, when you become too consumed by the minutia of the present, the truth is you can accomplish a great deal. Much of it may not be long standing. It's only plugging holes. It's only treating symptoms. It's only meeting the here and now. And we lose the vision, the sight on the horizon because we're so busy dealing with today, we sacrifice tomorrow. And if you really are committed to having a better life, then maybe we need to spend some more time on our tomorrows today so that we are prepared for tomorrow when it comes. Now, I want to be even handed and objective here. Conversely, if all we do is look to the horizon and stare off and dream and think wistfully and never really take any forward steps or make progress towards it, you're going to at best lose inertia and probably be distracted from your short-term requirements as well as never meeting your long-term goals. So not going to suggest we do that either. I think the analogy that I might want to share with you is, given how delicate of a dance this really is, it's perhaps similar to the way competitive swimmers maintain a certain rhythm. They power through very focused and forceful strokes, only periodically lifting their gaze to ensure, as they look above the surface of the water, that they're still heading in the right direction towards the right destination. And of course, avoiding drowning in their efforts and energies that they're currently undertaking. And I think we all should perhaps think of our futures the same way. You may be very good at your current job, but are you at best just treading water? Or are you really making progress and going further, faster, farther, etc.? Those are the things that I would hope we would seriously consider. If you don't like that analogy, maybe you prefer the analogy: envision yourself as the CEO of You Incorporated. Now, what do I mean by that? Any chief executive officer has to balance the needs of the organization for today, as well as have an eye on what the future must hold. They have to be able to be prepared for what is to come. So that often means that they have to identify the right resources, they have to have the right staffing, they have to be certain that they have their eye on the right business or market opportunities, and on and on. You perhaps could do the same kind of thinking about your own future. You have to maintain where you are now for the time being, certainly, and that's up to you whether that's a day, a week, a year, or a decade. But if we fail to invest in our own futures, we're going to miss a tremendous amount of opportunities, especially when you know that the current opportunities before you are not all that attractive. See, if you had good opportunities that you're looking forward to here and now, then perhaps there's an argument to be made to remain. But if you've judged that the opportunities before you in the current scenario are not all that attractive, certainly something to consider. Successes will continue to elude you if you're already feeling frustrated and as if you're failing, falling behind, not achieving what you had at one time hoped to. Then you need to get onto a very different track. This current one is not going to get you where you want to go. And for the many teachers and administrators that I speak to, that spark has left them. They no longer feel challenged or engaged with their work. The inspiration they once felt is waning or maybe even has been extinguished. And they don't have that sense of fulfillment that they yearn for, that they're hoping perhaps another career choice may be able to offer them. But they don't want to, of course, take steps back. So they look for ways to use what they currently do and know and excel at to continue on that path towards their own fulfillment, engagement, challenge, etc., which of course, training, instructional design, even being a freelance entrepreneur to sell those kinds of services or products you may be able to create using those skill sets, those are natural extensions of where you're all coming from. So work as you must or as you choose now, but don't stop dreaming and don't stop creating a journey, a forward path for yourself so that you can achieve all the things that you seek. You can't necessarily get to a then if we don't maintain some semblance of now, but let's get to a then. And of course, it's no surprise to you as you listen to this and as perhaps you think about your own situation that the journey to the future is paved with the actions of the present. And as we all have now put away Hagstrom or the Rand McNally maps and we rely on GPSs, to properly use a GPS, you have to know both your current location and your destination. Only then can the GPS provide you with the right path for the journey. You cannot reach there without knowing where here is. And you can't get to then without surviving now. And I'd like to be essentially the GPS to help you get to where you want to go. So, really, the choice is yours. Is it worth working toward a life that is fulfilling? Is that something that you yearn for? Do you want a career that recognizes your value instead of just constantly holding you accountable for things that are really beyond your immediate control? Do you want to feel connected to your authentic self, to your purpose? And if you have to balance the urgencies that are before you today with the promises that a tomorrow can bring, we're all realistic. I get it. I just ask that you don't let the opportunity to be fully aligned slip away from you. Let's balance what we must for today in order to achieve what you envision and would like for tomorrow. I hope this has been helpful for you to just review some of these very core concepts with me. And if you'd like to discuss further, I ask that you please schedule no cost, no obligation, just for us to connect and discuss and provide some clarity to where you'd like to go and how best to get there. Please register for a 20-minute conversation, a chat and chew, if you will, at oknowwhat.biz/calendar. And I'd like to help you succeed and get there quicker with less angst and make sure you do succeed. I look forward to talking. Let's do it soon. Thanks.